Hi, this is Sing Choi of Chongqing International Academy. And before I start off with my presentation today, I want to mention a friend that I had in middle school. He was an autistic kid who was struggling in every kind of situations in his life. And his disabilities of expressing his true emotions to the others made hard for us to understand what he was trying to say and what he was trying to think. So ever since I met him, I couldn't stop thinking about how I can help those who are struggling with expressing their own emotions. So this is why I've done research on transfer learning for facial emotion recognition. So today I'm trying to compare two methods for transfer learning, CNN and transformers. And in order to do that, I've used two most popular models for each of the methods, which are EfficientNet and Vision Transformer. For the data set, I've used FER 2013, which serves as a standard benchmark in this field. So my goal today is to break down my methodologies and share my findings and to explain what exactly the errors meant. Let's dive into the background first. So as you guys know, computers have become very proficient at a lot of image analysis over an extended time or period, but analyzing emotions remains a huge challenge. Facial emotion recognition's applications are very significant in a lot of aspects in our life. First of all, it helps computers respond more naturally to people. It could also be used in accessibility tools, especially for autistic individuals. And last, it serves as a common benchmark task for comparing two different kinds of vision models. But at the same time, it's very hard to do since emotions are very, very subjective things, and everybody has their own distinctive ways of expressing their emotions. So to understand the whole experiment, we must know the brief explanations about each of the methods. So CNNs are a very strong and efficient baseline for images, while Vision Transformers uses attention over image patches and often improves accuracy. The practical constraints of the whole experiment was that the lack of training time and the GPU resources, which limited how many extra experiments that we could have run. So the goal was to do a fair student scale comparison using transfer learning. Alright, so first off, how does a model learn from images? So we use a collection of examples images used for learning. And then during training sessions, the model learns patterns from many different kinds of samples. And after we're done learning, we do multiple tests on both of the models with new images that they have been trained on. And after all these processes, we check the overall performances by using accuracy and a confusion matrix chart. So confusion matrix chart is a chart that shows which emotions gets mixed up with others. And I'm going to elaborate on that on the further slides. So let's see how each of these methods are different in their own mechanisms. So CNN is an initial for convolutional neural network. It looks at small parts in images at a time, like a moving window. And it analyzes curvatures in data in the images, where early layers learn edges and shapes, and later layers combine those fundamentals into facial features like eyes and mouth. On the other hand, Vision Transformer, it splits the image into small patches called tiles. And it uses attention to compare patches with each other so that they can capture the whole relationship across our whole face. The comparison between these two is very crucial in terms of their inherent trade-offs. CNN is often faster and much efficient to train compared to Vision Transformer. But Vision Transformer can have a much higher accuracy than CNN, but it takes a longer time to train. So we're trying to compare them to see how these two models perform with their different mechanisms and to observe any kinds of trade-offs. So my main question was, if we use the same data set and under similar settings, does a pre-trained Vision Transformer outperform an efficient CNN baseline for facial emotion classification? And the other important objectives were to find out which emotions were easiest and hardest to predict, what kinds of errors were prominent, and how the time and GPU limits affected the overall accuracy. So I break down 3 stages for the experimental processes. So the first one was the data set. So as I've mentioned earlier, FER 2013 is a huge data set which consists of many facial images labeled by different kinds of emotions. And the data set is usually divided into 2 folders, which are test folders and train folders. And each of these folders have 7 different kinds of categories labeled by different kinds of emotions like anger, disgust, fear, and happiness. And as you guys can see, there are 7 different kinds of folders for emotions, and a lot of emotions have at least 1,000 numbers of files or greater than 1,000. But except for disgust, which only have 111 files, it's going to have a huge effect on our overall performances. Now I'm going to explain it on the error sections. So second, the pre-processing part, we loaded images with using PyTorch data loader, and then we simplify the data so the model can learn in a very efficient way through resizing and normalizing the data. And after that, we train those data into the models to get our results. And it's important to note that all the experiments were based on transfer learning. We start from models that has already learned general image skills. And then we fine-tune those models on the FER 2013 so we can have the final layer predict the emotion classes. So I like to walk through how I've trained for each of these models. Specifically for EfficientNet, I've used a Torch Vision library for pre-training EfficientNet. And as I mentioned earlier on the previous slide, the final classification layer was replaced for emotion labels. And then I conducted different kinds of settings, such as learning rate, batch size, and optimizers. While Vision Transformer, I've used Hugging Face, which is a huge package of pre-trained models. And then it also has a built-in classification head, which serves as a filtering system for the data before the data are put onto the models. For fair comparison between these two, I've trained 25 epochs each because 25 epochs are the baseline for comparing these twos. So the constraint that I found during the experiment was that training Vision Transformer was a hassle, and it was much slower compared to EfficientNet. And on my available GPU, Vision Transformer took about 10 hours to 15 hours for 25 epochs each. So the key results that we can get was that the best observed performance for EfficientNet was around 33% compared to 65% accuracy for Vision Transformer. So as you guys can see, VIT has a much higher accuracy than the EfficientNet. And what I've also found for EfficientNet was that no matter how strong the model was and no matter how we repeated those experiments, when it comes to a certain point, learning accuracy tips off at a certain number after a few epochs. So here is a chart that shows which has a better accuracy. So alongside the results, then what were the errors? Well, the first one was the discuss samples. So in the data set, I've already showed you guys that discuss samples only had 111 files, which is a significantly smaller number than 1,000 samples. And obviously we can predict that Vision Transformer often find it hard to distinguish the disgust emotions. And second, for both the models, they got confused a lot with harder emotions like neutral and sadness and fear to anger. And in why this matters, my results confirmed that some of the labels were indeed ambiguous, and the model's predictions seemed reasonable even when it did not match the actual labels. So here are the images that support the claim that models' predictions sometimes actually don't align with the actual labels. So even though they predicted wrong for each of these emotion images, they often said it was true, and often some models predicted that they were false, even though there are some emotions that were aligned well or that were kind of did not match with each other. So right now I'm showing you guys here is the confusion matrix chart. So it's a chart that has y-axis and x-axis. So for the y-axis, it's the actual labels, and the x-axis indicates the model's predictions. So there are a lot of boxes in one square, and the lighter the square is, the less accuracy the model was. And for example, if I use this darkest square as an example, there were multiple instances where the model's prediction aligned with the actual labels. So this chart effectively shows the overall accuracy of the models and where it kind of struggled with identifying emotions. So my conclusions show transformers can outperform a CNN baseline for emotion recognition on FER 2013. But higher accuracy indeed came with much longer training time. And easier emotions like happiness and surprise were more visually distinctive, so the model was finding it easy to identify those kind of emotions. But for hard emotions like neutral and sadness, they overlapped in a lot of facial cues and sometimes can be mislabeled. The practical results that we could get from the results was that for student projects, CNNs were much easier and much more effective to run and tune. But transformers can also be worth it if we had enough time and enough GPU capacity. So to improve upon my experiment, I would love to clean and relabel ambiguous samples to improve the overall accuracy. Or I try to adjust some of the parameter settings or test other kind of transformers to see any of the different trade-offs or the different results. So my advisor was Irene Choi, who graduated from Carnegie Mellon University for human-computer interaction. So I hope this talk serves as a huge starting point for more people to get interested in this realm. And furthermore, my personal goal is to keep improving these models so that one day I can actually make a huge difference for people like my friend, and leading to a device or a product that can make people's lives easier. And I would definitely want to contribute to the human world by utilizing these kind of technologies. Thank you for listening. I would love to open the floor for any further questions.